Okay, I'm going to go over some just get to know me and operating standards. So this is something, if time permits, I'd love to do with every kid um, when we just get in the weight room. So gonna go over just kind of like equipment, standards of cleaning up, and breaking stuff down, and then like going through a weight room sheet, variables, and then some coaching philosophies. Okay, so about me, from San Diego, have a twin and an older sister. Love to ride my bike. I'm active. Went to TCU, studied exercise science, worked with sports there. In high school, I had strength and conditioning coaches. Big inspiration for me. Reason I'm doing what I'm doing today. So variables within the weight room and reading a weight room sheet. So I always give the kids a sheet to follow so they can track their progress. We use the FIT VP um, acronym to kind of understand exercise variables. So F is frequency, I is intensity or the load or weight, T for time, and then another T for type, and then volume and progression. So frequency is how frequent you might do an exercise. So right, the girls are coming in 3 days a week. Intensity, how heavy the load is, or the duration of how intense the exercise is. Time, right? This might be how long an exercise lasts, the duration of an exercise, right? Cardio, running a mile versus a jump. Those are very two different time windows. And then the type, right? Like I just discussed, is it power? Is it strength? Is it cardio? And then volume is sets and reps. So sets is kind of like the rounds, and then the repetitions are how many we're doing. Those together make up your volume. Progression is how we can make the exercise harder using all of the above variables. So here's kind of an overview of a sheet. I'll have the title up the front at the front with the phase. So we like to break trainings up into phases, and depending on the calendar year. So just for the far left, phase one, weeks 1 to 4. Right, I have kids write in their names. I'll usually track their training maxes. With a lot of these kids, I don't work with them year round, so a lot of times those things can be empty. And then I'll have the conference and the high school logo, and then also the block that they're in. So, right, I might have different blocks for different training phases. Excuse me, and then I'll have the season and the year. Season is usually whatever sport there are. So, spring for lacrosse, winter for soccer, right? And then as we kind of get more into the sheet, right here are those variables like we mentioned. So we'll break each phase up into weeks, right, and days. So at the top, you can see day one here, and then you can see the exercise name starting from the left, and you can see we have going from week 1 all the way to week 4. We see kind of the amount of rounds, right? So we see that there's 4 columns for 6. So that'd be 4 by 6, 4 sets of 6, 4 rounds of 6, and then the next week 2, 3 sets of 5. Right. So that's kind of how you follow a sheet. In this column where it says weight, that's where you would track your weight. So we're always looking to track our weight with each exercise. Okay, so this is a little bit about. I try and do this for every sport. Try and break down what are called KPIs or key performance indicators, and really what that's looking at is kind of studying like the demands of each game, the physiological demands of each game, and then trying to break down kind of what is um, most important for you from a physiological standpoint. So a lot of soccer is a walk and a sprint sport, right? So 90% of the sport is walking, and 10% of the sport is played at the highest velocity. So what that really tells us is that 10% that we're looking to train is going to be the most important, and that's high velocity, right? So um, really the kind of training we're looking to do is in a small time window, right? And then secondly, momentum in any contact sport, any sport where you're throwing bodies or making contact with other players is momentum is going to be really important. Momentum is comprised of size and speed. So the amount of lean muscle mass that we can put on kids with their growing height, growing bones, and the amount of force production in the horizontal plane or speed we can develop, really the better. Um, that's always going to help them with their contact sport. So, really, those two ideas: short time frame window for producing force, and then secondly, momentum. So those are kind of the KPIs that um, come out of soccer. So strength slash output is really something there's always kind of a teeter totter. There's always an opposite between the amount of volume that you're going to do, right, or the duration of the exercise and the intensity, right? So if you have something that's really high intensity, it's going to usually be, like I just was talking about, shorter duration, shorter time frame in terms of force production. So strength, like producing force, looks like this, right? It's really heavy, but it also looks like this, right? So in this picture, right, we have someone producing force on two legs total, producing a lot of force with a lot of weight. And then on this, we're producing a lot of weight, but we're doing it on one leg. And so the point of these two pictures is strength is really relative um, to, right, how much force you're producing per body weight, how much force you're producing on two legs versus single leg. So the point is strength is always relative, and what we try and do is get kids to push and understand their relative limits. So we try and get them to try and understand language around that. We use RIR and RPE to try and get kids to understand subjectively how they can push themselves, and then the sheet kind of supports that objectively with them writing it in and tracking it. So strength is definitely not whatever this is, right? Producing minimal force over a long duration, right? Almost like endurance or cardio. That's not what we're looking for. There's time and place for that, but in the weight room and strength conditioning, most of the times with these kids, we're focusing more on high force, shorter time frame. Okay, so some language and weight room communication. So I always do um, a set call on the whistle. So if I have two exercises, that's called a superset. So we'll have a pair of exercises. I usually break kids into ones and twos. So they pair up, and I'll have one start at the top of that set, right? So say we have squats and we have push-ups. I always have the one start on the squats, and then the twos will watch and almost kind of coach up their first partner. And then once the one is done with the squats, they go into push-ups. Twos goes on to squats, and it kind of has that snaking pattern. There are times where we'll just have one kid get on both exercises, but this kind of setup keeps things really structured, and we always do that on the whistle. So say, right, one gets done with their squats, they go to push-ups, and they're done with their push-ups. They always wait for the second set. So I'll always call it out. I'll yell out second set. I'll yell out the reps, and then I blow it again. So this just gives kids, um, you know, repetition with what they're doing. And then in between sets, we always have kids write in their weights, rest 2 minutes, right? They rest a while. Sometimes we'll add stretches in between or mobility. So that's really the flow and the communication that happens in the weight room. We also push kids to hold each other accountable. They're in pairs, so we make them use communication that supports accountability. Name, command, volume. That's something we always go over in the weight room warm up. And a couple other things: BB and KB, barbell and kettlebell. Right, those are shortened. The clips go on the side of the bar. These are usually things I show in the weight room. Clips go on the side of the bar to keep weights on the bar. There's two types of bars. There's a larger 45-pound and a 35-pound bar. We use, each for different things. And then I always try and communicate the exercises to kids, and try and relate it back to why it's important to their sport. So we always use in order to statements when we're justifying an exercise or a drill. Equipment, right? The rack holds the bar. The safeties, right? They're at the bottom. They keep you safe. That's a lot of times where we'll keep the bar on the safeties. The bench, I always teach them how to pull out the bench. It's a lever. You step on it, wheels come up, and you pull it out. And then clean up. I always show them, or I always try and show them where the J cups. So the J cups are what holds the bar when you're doing a set. That always goes at a certain spot. The safeties go at a certain spot as well. And then other things for cleanups, bands go on the there's a rack in the corner. Dumbbells go in the back in their assigned column with the logo facing up. Um, and then benches always get pushed in, straps get lifted up. Heel raises get put in the closet as well as yoga or Swiss balls. So there's just smaller things that I try and explain to kids before they get in about cleanup. Um, I push kids to bring food. So right after when they're done with their lift, they can get a post meal snack. They always need cleats, tennis shoes. We do go barefoot a lot in the weight room, but they always need cleats and tennis shoes. The schedule is changed a bit, so it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like we talked about, and yeah. Remind.com is a good way to communicate with kids, so I'm going to try and use that to just reach out to kids on times and dates on things. If you have any questions, just let me know.